What's up, everybody? It's Dan, Binder Boneyard, coming at you from the office. It is a cold and kind of dreary November day. It's actually Saturday. Doing this a day early because I have obligations tomorrow that I won't be able to get a podcast done. And I'm trying to be better about getting these things done regularly. Apologize for the big gap last month, and I'm trying hard to not have that happen again. I appreciate you guys, the likes, the subscribes, the shares, the mentions. Had a couple people have been sharing them on Facebook, so that's super helpful. Appreciate that very much. It does go a long ways towards just spreading the awareness and growing the business, and it is a long uphill climb. Nothing happens overnight, and so I'm just trying to be patient and let this grow organically. And by organically, I mean everybody tell everybody. So thank you. I appreciate it. Hopefully the heater humming in the background isn't too distracting. But yeah, I had an interesting request a while back, and I finally get around to it. Someone had asked about parts hoarding and or preparation, and I am a big proponent of prep. And for me, if you followed me for any length of time, you know that's not, like, we've got 3 months worth of food in the garage, and every truck I drive has a small bag in it with extra clothes, a magazine for my conceal carry. It's got some food. It's got first aid kit. I'm just prepared for whatever. Because you don't know, especially out here on the West Coast, we have things that happen with zero warning, like earthquakes and blizzards. We do have a volcano. Actually, there's 7 volcanoes around us here that the last one erupted in 1980, 81. So stuff happens, and it's good to be prepared. And on that same vein, I stock for my personal trucks. I usually have one of everything. So you can break this down into layers or levels, if you're from Europe. The best thing to do is to start with the basics. If you guys are doing your own maintenance, oil changes, coolant flushes, belts, hoses, whatever, I recommend that everybody always have enough on the shelf for one service. So always have an extra oil filter, have extra 7 quarts of oil, have extra fuel filter, all that stuff. Always have a kit ready to go on the shelf. If we learned anything from the last few years, it was supply chain stuff. And the oil filters that we use are generally some of the most common oil filters in the world. And my local Napa, because that's where I buy most of my parts from, had run out. There were no 1515 oil filters on the shelf. And that's one of the downsides or upsides to having the most common filter in the world, is that a lot of stuff uses it. So when the supply runs out from the manufacturer, it goes fast. So, there were no 1515 oil filters, which made me nervous, but I had enough on the shelf here at the shop because, we stock a lot of stuff that, we were able to get through all the jobs and all the things we needed to do, and be okay. And I was able to get restocked before we needed stuff again. But some of you guys aren't so lucky. If you wait until the day of to do an oil change, you go to the store and you get the filter and you get the oil and you get the stuff, it might not be there. And okay, it's not the end of the world, you didn't change your oil this weekend. But what about next weekend? What about, oh, my main car broke down, my wife borrowed the truck, whatever, and I got to drive the Scout this week. Well, now you're putting a couple 100 miles on old oil, low oil, and it's not the end of the world, especially if you're running 7 quarts. It'll last. I am guilty of putting 10,000 miles on oil before doing a change. It happens. But what I'm getting at is it's good to have a stock on hand. A filter and some oil doesn't take up much space, especially if you've got a medicine cabinet in the back of your Scout, like we sell, that carries 5 quarts of oil and room for a filter and room for other stuff. So you could always even rotate out your stock like that. Carry your oil on board, and then when it comes time for the change, you use the oil that was in the cabinet and then restock that. But just your basic first level of whatever, I think you should have filters and fluids on the shelf. Like, that's the bare minimum to keep them going. And then the next level is wearables. And I don't mean Apple Watch. I mean fan belts, radiator hoses, heater hoses, fuel line. Not a lot of it, but some. U-joints, wheel bearings, brake pads or brake shoes. I think it was very important to have a set on the shelf just for whatever, in case it's time. Because you don't know when that U-joint's going to go out if you're not doing maintenance on it. Or even when you do maintenance, like, stuff wears out. It just does. So, having the bearings, having the seals, having the U-joints, having that stuff on the shelf in the garage or in your spare bedroom in a tote or, whatever, is the next line of preparedness that I think people should have. And I know everybody's budget is different and it's tough sometimes, but if you are thoughtful and, okay, it's time for brakes, you do a brake job or someone does a brake job for you, buy a second set of pads. And now you have them on the shelf. So when it's time to do another brake job in 3 years, you have your pads. They're already paid for. Doesn't cost you anything in parts. And they're ready to go. So then if you don't have the budget, like if times are tough but you got to do brakes, at least you've got them. You can do them, and then you can buy your replacement pads when money comes back in. Or if things are fine, then you use your old pads, buy another set of pads, put them on the shelf, and now you're good to go again. Because you don't know when your brakes are going to wear out. You don't know your driving habits. You don't know what's going to happen in the next 2-3 years. So, having this stuff on the shelf and being prepared is it's just a time saver. It's peace of mind. It's good. And in the event that you, God forbid, this is hypothetical, it should never happen to you, but you sell your Scout or you sell your truck or Travelall, you have all these parts that can go with it, you know, to make sure that the next buyer, next owner, is properly outfitted with the parts that it needs, so that, you know, you set them up for good ownership as well. So that's important. But yes, you know, next time you're buying a fan belt, buy 2 of them. Next time you're buying whatever, you know, buy an extra, keep it on the shelf, have it at the ready for whatever happens, because you just don't know. New parts fail, it happens. So having a second one on the shelf, or having one on the shelf, is just a good idea. And then after that, now you start getting into it gets a little deeper, depending on your space, depending on you know, how much work you do yourself. Then, you know, now what do you start holding on to? If you've got the wearables, I know people like to have thermostats on hand. I know guys that keep heater cores, because some of these things are, when they fail, it might not be, you might not think much about it, but when your heater core goes out and you know, not that you're stranded, but like, it becomes an instant inconvenience. You know, summertime, not a big deal, but if you're driving in the winter and the fall, it can be a big deal. So having a heater core, because the other thing is, heater cores, they're not the easiest thing to get. The D series non-AC heater cores had been out of stock for like 2 years, and they're finally available again. So, you know, having that stuff on the shelf saves you a lot of headache and a lot of hassle. So, you know, stocking things like that. I know guys that keep axle shafts with the U-joint in them, just on the shelf. If you break an axle, whatever, it's easy to change it out. Rear end, same thing. You know, if you, on the rear axles, on the Scouts anyways, if you have a wheel bearing go bad and the axle falls out, a lot of times it wrecks the splines, or it can damage the backing plate of the axle. So some people keep extras of those around, because you know, you're going to need it at some point. And then, you know, beyond the wearables, beyond the usable parts, then you start getting into the future, like what ifs. Like it's really, really, really hard to buy engine parts for the 6 cylinders anymore. And I don't mean the AMC ones, I mean the IH 6 cylinders. So, you know, having an engine rebuild kit, having, you know, with pistons and rings and all of that stuff, if you're going to keep your Scout or your International for a long time, and you're going to pass it on to your kid or whatever, maybe it's not so crazy that you have a rebuild kit. You know, it's, what are they, $1,000? I know it's expensive, but it's way cheaper than 10 years from now having a machine shop tell you that they can't do it at all and you need to swap something else in. So something to consider. Transmission rebuild kit, transfer case rebuild kit, you know, that kind of stuff is good to have. You know, the Dana 20s and the 205s, they were used in a lot of trucks for a lot of years, so I doubt we're ever going to run out of those rebuild kits. But having one on the shelf now for when the potential comes up that you might need it, you know, that's also helpful. And it saves you some money too, because the price of everything just keeps going up. So you buy your 205 rebuild kit for $200 now, and then when you need it in 5 years, they're $300. Well, you know, you're money ahead. So that sort of thing is probably the next layer, is rebuildable parts that may or may not exist in 10 or 15 years from now. And that goes for interior stuff too, like heater switches wear out, headlight switches, fan or motor switches, they have a tendency to go out when it's least expected as well. So get an extra headlight switch, get an extra blower switch, wiper switch. They're small, they don't take up much space. Some of them are not available new anymore, so you need to buy a good used. So make sure that you get yourself a tested, proven switch that you can just label it and put it in a tote. And then that's the other thing, is make sure you're marking this stuff so you know what it is, because in 10 years from now you might not know what the heck you bought. And then also when you pass it on to the next owner, they need to know what they're getting. Or if you end up selling all this stuff someday, you need to know what you're selling. So put it in a tote, organize it, something with a good lid that's kind of, I don't want to say airtight, but keeps the critters out, keeps the moisture out. If you live in a real wet climate, a little silica or whatever that stuff is, it keeps the humidity down in those things, or keep it in your garage, whatever. But all these sorts of things are good to have if you're intend on being an IH owner for a long time. Or here's the other thing to this side of this, is let's say you buy another one. Let's say you buy another Scout and it needs something. Well, you've already got it. It's on the shelf. You've got your tune-up kit, then I guess that's something I didn't cover early on. That in that secondary layer of belts and hoses and whatnot, you should have tune-up. Spark plug set, wire set, cap, rotor. If you have electronic ignition, have another pickup module. If you're running points, have another points and condenser set. Have a coil. Have all that tune-up stuff. So I'm sorry that I missed that in the second layer, but yeah, that's important stuff to have early on. And so back to my other point, if you buy another one, you bring another one in, you have all this stuff on the shelf that is you can easily apply it to the new truck, because there is a lot of crossover in the parts that the vehicle's used. So you have these parts on hand, ready to go, so you can jump right into your new project instead of having to order stuff, or you did order something and it comes back and it turns out it's wrong. You have yours to compare against and try out. So having all this stuff on the shelf ready to go, it really opens up your options for the future. And then it's, you get into like the future, like for me, my 64 Travelette, it is deteriorating. I drive it every day. It was already kind of rusty when I got it, and now I'm just, in the last 4 years I've watched it just rust a little more. So I've got front fenders that are clean and set aside. I've got another short bed that is clean and set aside. I have a tailgate that's clean. So when the day comes that we do a restoration on this Travelette, I have all these clean parts ready to go. And that's going to save a ton of time and get it in and out of the body shop that much faster. So if you know that your truck the front fenders are rusting through, start looking for another set. If you have a Scout and front fenders are hard to get nowadays, if you stumble into a pair of fenders, buy them, because yours are going to get banged up, or when the time comes for restoration you might need them. Quarter panels, end caps, all the sheet metal stuff that you're going to need in a restoration. You might not need it now, but it's not getting any cheaper, and some of this stuff they don't make anymore. So if you stumble into a cache of used parts that is good, I recommend that you consider buying it if you have the space and you have the thought that you're going to keep this truck forever or whatever. But like I said, I have everything but a cab for my red truck pretty much set aside. So that might be excessive for most of you, but I plan on driving these things for another 50 years, because that'll make me 94. So I don't want to be caught without something. So I have everything that I need. So that's something to just keep in mind. Glass is one of those things that it could be smart to keep, especially the curved stuff. If you have a Travelall and you stumble into some curved side glass, like, buy it. Just put it in the rafters of your garage or wherever. Store it upright. Do not lay it down flat. Store it upright and hang on to that stuff. The windshields may or may not. It's hard to say because they use those windshields for a lot of years. D-series windshields are one of those things where I would recommend you buy one and put it aside, because the stock on those is hit or miss, and the companies that make them, they could stop making them at any time. So having a D-series windshield in the rafters would be a good idea. Same with the rubber gasket. It's always good to have that stuff in a pair. Don't go out and buy glass without buying a new gasket, just because you're going to need it. So, so just think about your situation. Think about your, what your long-term goal is. And, if you're thinking about passing this truck down to your kids, be realistic. In 40 years, it's going to need fenders, rockers, quarter panels, floors. It's going to need all this stuff. So do your kid a favor and start stocking up on this stuff now. Start gathering sheet metal, find a better top, find whatever you need to do, and just stash it if you can. I know it's hard. It takes up some room, gets in the way. Your old lady yells at you every time she tries to get the Christmas tree out of the attic and there's a Scout fender and a floor pan. Like, I know, I hear it. But just think about, the long-term side of it. You guys have no problem saving for their kids' college or whatever, even though that's a terrible gamble. But what's always going to be worth something? A Scout. So just think about that. But anyways, to my original point, just do it in layers. Get yourself some filters, oil. The next time you think about it, get some belts, hoses, get a tune-up kit, and then start looking into switches, latches, going up from there. So anyway, hopefully that gave you something to think about. I'm sure I overlooked some stuff. I'm sure someone will tell me what I did. So anyway, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for listening. If you have any other podcast suggestions, please let me know. Just through any of the social media avenues, I am around. So I'm always receptive. Just let me know, and I'll do my best to try to make it happen. So thanks again, everybody. Until next time, I'm Dan from Binder Boneyard.